Shalom, shalom. Check my sounding, make sure I'm good. Give me 1 second. Slack it. Slack it. Right, all right. All right. First and foremost, as always, we want to give all honors and praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Achakodash. Double honors and salutations unto the elders, apostles of Great Millstone, the elder bishops, the water for your labor and your diligence through these years. You're worthy of the title. Shalom to the 144,000, the governing body of the kingdom that are fast approaching, beautiful brothers that are scattered throughout the four corners of the globe that are pushing this truth at this very hour. All right. And giving Yahweh, why Yahweh Shah no rest. All right. Shalom unto you men and shalom to your past spirits that believe on the names of Yahweh, why Yahweh Shah. That is the actual names of the Heavenly Father and His Son in the ancient Paleo Hebrew. All right. I'm the brother Yazra Allah from the GMS Dallas camp, coming back at you with another quick hit lesson I brought to Zah, meaning Lord willing in the ancient Paleo Hebrew. It is edifying to those who are meant to receive it now. It came with this title, I want to say about a few days ago. It was actually a land back off of the priest, a beautiful brother here in the Dallas camp. Osman Wah, Shalom, brother, if you're listening. I think his page is Psalms for Thought 1444. I believe that is. Subscribe and be edified. All right, he went into, and it was a spirit because I was watching his lesson, but something was on my mind pertaining to what he was already going into. So the name of his lesson is Data Centers or Modern Day Groves. And it's pretty much just kind of a land back off what the brother went into, right? Talking about it pertaining to these data centers that are being, erected, and set up all across the country. Well, to be honest with you, there's more than 8,000 plus of these data centers that are worldwide, with the U.S. housing the majority of them. All right, which is controlled, which is to push basically AI, cryptocurrency, and all these things. All right, but what I did here really quick here is I basically, talking about the New World Order system. All right, the MOTB. All right, that's being erected. All right, as we speak. All right, you have a lot of these different communities, and you have a lot of uproars with different people. All right, because of these data centers are being set up. All right, they're being erected in neighborhoods where people are losing water. All right, or their water pressure is very low. Whether they're taking a shower or doing dishes or whatever the case may be, because these data centers they hoard a lot of energy. All right, hoard a lot of water to cool off these data centers. All right, that pump and flow through there. A lot of people are complaining also because of their electric bill is sky high. Slovakia. So what I did here is I went on chat here and I just wanted to do some comparison, right, to modern day data centers compared to ancient groves. And to my surprise, it was they're very similar. At least Chad is on point. With the things that how the comparison and how it's broken down. I just kind of wanted to run through it here a little bit. We'll pull a couple of precepts and we'll close it out. But I asked the question, how are they? How are modern day data centers? How are they comparable to ancient groves or temples? And it says that comparison actually holds up in a few interesting ways. If you're looking at it symbolically or structurally, not literally. In ancient times, groves and temples were places where people believed power, knowledge, and influence were concentrated. Today's data centers function similarly, just as in technological sense. First, think about where power lives. Ancient temples held spiritual authority. Priests interpreted truth, controlled access, and met and meet and mediated between people and the higher forces. Now, massive data centers owned by companies like Google, Amazon Web Services, and Microsoft store and process the world's information. Whoever controls that infrastructure has an enormous influence over communication, commerce, and even perception of truth. Right. And as we know, Second Esdras talks about Esau being the end of this world. This is Esau's blessing. All right. When Isaac blessed him with the sword, and that's just not necessarily physical. All right. Because as he was ordained to have rulership, all right, of the first age, should I say, all right, in this time period that we're living in, Esau being the end of the world and Jacob being the beginning of it that followeth, which represents the kingdom to come. All right, so in this time period, all right, this man has gone throughout the earth and he's gained fatness of earth by way of what? Force through the sword. In many ways, what I mean by the sword, not necessarily, weaponry in the sense of physical, but it could be your philosophy, it could be your religion. In this case, and point technology. All right. These are the things that basically what they do is because they lead unto destruction, as the scripture says. There's a way that seems right unto a man, but in the end, there's death there. All right, so a lot of people are going to grab hold of this, and you see this happening. All right, I did a couple of lessons before back. Um, I want to say maybe a couple of years ago, I remember one lesson I did particular called "The AI is the New Golden Calf." All right. And you see that happening more and more as AI is ramping up. A lot of people are looking and leaning to AI for all of their daily answers, for all of their, for revelations and whatnot. All right. And the crazy thing about it is you have all of this information that's being used and stored, but most of these people are going on these platforms, these AI platforms, and they're asking some of the dumbest questions. All right. And questions are answers to questions that are now being given as the prophets are out here. But nonetheless, this is a stronghold that Esau Edom uses, all right, to captivate, and galvanize the minds of the people, right? So it goes on to say here, second, there's the idea of restricted access. You can't just walk into the inner parts of an ancient temple, right? And you'll know that even when you're talking about King Solomon's temple, right? You talk about, the high priest, there were certain, um, um, there was order, all right, to even, on the righteous end, dealing with the temple and Yahweh Shai, King David, King Solomon. All right, we had high priests that only had access, to certain things that the average Israelite man could not have. And this is the same thing with data centers that are set up today. All right, even on the right and on the left hand side, if I may add, goes on to say here only certain people had clearance. Data centers are the same, highly secured, guarded, climate controlled environments. Very few people actually enter them, yet they affect billions. Right, so this is controlled by a small group of people. All right, ultimately. All right, the top 1%ers. All right, we know that to be the mini fitteds, as Elder, Elder Apostle Ramlan likes to call them. Right, it goes on to say, third, invisible processes shaping visual life. In the grove or temple, rituals were performed behind the scenes but were believed to impact outside world. In the data center, algorithms run constantly, ranking what you see, filtering information, powering financial systems, AI, and social platforms. Most people never see this, but it shapes daily reality, right? And that's the thing. Paul even talked about that. What is that? Matter of fact, let me grab that. Ephesians 2. Ephesians 2 and I'll go straight to the point, 2 and 2. Where in past time you walked according to the counsel of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience. Right, this atmospheric realm that we live under, all right, above the earth, the heavens, so to speak, all right, where spirits pretty much operate. All right, prince of the power of the air, what? Talking about airwaves, talking about frequencies, radars, satellites. All right, this is another form of this man's sword, which I spoke about earlier, which is part of his blessing. Okay, in the ancient days, of course, this is more talking about spiritual, things because you can't see spirits. But nonetheless, Ephesians also goes into that as well. What we wrestle against, all right, spiritual wickedness in high places. You see, so when you have the understanding of what this is basically it signifies that Satan, which is basically the left hand angel of Yahweh Shah, all right, his influence is pervasive. All right, a lot like the air itself, basically, is what it's going into. or what it's liking it to here in this breakdown in chat. So you have to understand that there are three pillars to the New World Order agenda that are being set up right now. All right, first being the digital ID, second being the CBD, which is a central bank digital currency, and the third is what is that? The ESG and governmental social governance. All right, smart cities that we know right now are being constructed as we speak. Okay, it was World Economic Forum back in, I want to say 2023. I think there were 34 or 36 countries worldwide, all right, that have smart city governance initiatives, all right, and surveillance monitoring, all right. It's basically reported technology, all right, a digital AI, or should I say a digital ID, all right, which tracks people in real time. So whether you're shopping, entertainment activities, all right, carbon footprint, all right, along with these 15-minute travel limits, all right, these cities that are being set up. There was an act that was passed in 2023 as well called the Land Development Project. For some of you that may remember that when there were a lot of train derailments, all right, that were happening, all right, all over the U.S. for some reason, these trains were just derailing left and right. Why was that? All right, and ironically, it was always around a body of water. If you go back and Google it, do the research, you'll notice that 95, 98% of those derailments were around some sort of body of water. All right. And what that did basically is it allowed the government to seize polluted land and move the residents to these smart cities. All right. So if your water was poisoned, you didn't get to opt out. All right. Now, make no mistake about it. This man is going to use this same type of things, the same type of, as scripture talks about, we are not ignorant of this man's devices. He's going to use the same type of methods, all right, on moving people out of their area or lands to build these smart cities. He's doing it now. Not these smart cities. I mean, these data centers. He's doing it now. All right. You see a lot of these different lands that are being bought out. All right. Because they're setting up these data centers, which is basically goes back to like what I said, the New World Order agenda, right? Agenda, this techno tyranny that he's erecting right now in real time. All right. So as we see this beast system that's being erected right now, for those of you that are still asleep, all right, and still can't see what this is, I mean, you may need to fast or pray, do whatever that you need to do, you know, uh, um, that you may see and understand, because we're in the latter in time where this man is really getting ready to come down with this Revelations 12:12 great wrath, because these people know that they're at the end. Okay. They know that they have a short time and their time is up. Okay. Is it make no mistake about it, this three pillars is going to be the infrastructure that will be embedded into the MOTB, the beast system. All right, and this is going to be a snare to most of the people on in the earth, because most of the people are going to bend the knee to this thing. Okay, that's that Revelations 13:16. All right, it goes on to say the fourth objects of trust and dependence. People depend on temples for guidance, blessings, and direction. Today, people rely on digital systems, search engines, cloud storage, AI to make decisions, store memories, and even define identity. That reliance can take a kind of modern faith where people, whether people realize it or not, right? And that's what happens. A lot of people are going on Chat GPT and these different, platforms asking questions. All right. There was one guy I remember in an article that I read. He's asked Chat if he should continue to smoke meth, and Chat said, "Yeah." you know, Again, so you got to understand these are left-handed spirits and entities that you're communicating with when you get on these lines that are pumping out of these data centers, man. All right. This is nothing but wickedness. Okay. It goes on to say, but where there's comparison breakdowns is pushed too far. Ancient groves and temples were explicit religious and tied to worship of deities. Data centers are tools, powerful ones, but still human built infrastructures. They don't possess intention or divinity on their own. Well, that's to be argued. The real influence comes from the people and the systems behind them. And that's what the point is. Okay? Going back to what I said, who's the ruler of this world right now? All right, that would be Esau Edom. All right, so his intentions of setting this up, because this is the new golden calf that he's introducing to the world. All right, this is that man acting as God again. Okay, which brings me to what is that? What is that? Acts 17 talks about that, because it said here, platform, they don't possess the intention of driven people tied to worship. Yep, it says, but still built by built human infrastructure. Was that Acts 17:24? Yahweh Shah that made the world and all the things therein, seeing that he is the Lord of heaven and earth, dwelleth not in temples made with hands. You see? So as a lot of people are going online and they're looking for answers, they're looking for relief, they're looking for comfort, they're looking for any kind of way in this hell, all right, to get some kind of rest, all right, some kind of direction, all right. Yahweh Bashim Yahshua is not there. Okay, the prophets are out here and they're set up to let you know, to show you the way to Yahweh Bashim Yahshua. But as the name is being known, all right, as his ways are being known and explained and expounded onto you, you're still going to have a lot of our people that are going to go to these temples. Because that's all these data centers are, man. They're modern day groves, just as in the ancient days. All right. And it's funny when we think about it. So this is pretty much history really enacted. All right. When Paul spoke to the Athenians at Mars Hill, when you read Acts the 17th chapter, there were what? There Epicureans, there were what was it, philosophers, there were Stoics. Just as today, we have social media influencers, atheists, all right, and all sorts of religious bug outs. Paul found, all right, in that town, there was an altar with an inscription, the unknown God, all right, where he's basically just making it known unto them, all right, just as the prophets are today, making it known unto the world who the Heavenly Father and His Son are, Yahweh, why Yahweh Shah. Okay, that you may have what? No excuse. There is only one power to be worshiped. All right, everything else is idolatry. All right, and all these things are nothing more but congregations and temples of the dead. But nonetheless, as these data centers get set up more and more and more, just in the ancient days, the people are going to rely on these things. All right, so when this man gets to putting out his draconian laws, draconian measures, all right, these things are going to enforce that. Okay, and that's what this has happened ever since the cell phone. This has been a gradual thing. You could have told me back in the 80s that we'd have to walk around every day with this little square thing in our pockets called a phone. I would have laughed at you back then. And I'm sure a lot of you brothers who were tuned in would have done the same thing, right? But now here in this latter in time, we're looking at the cell phones now because what was it was gradually to get you dependent. All right. Communicate. So you communicate with a device or through a device. That's how the cell phone started. Look where we are today. Now he's got data centers set up, man. All right. Where now you're communicating specifically and directly with left hand spirits. You see? Goes on to say, so in a roundabout way, to put this, data centers are like modern temples of information and control, not spiritual worship, places where unseen forces, but data, algorithm, and networks are managed by small groups yet impact the masses, right? Because that's what it's all about. It's about controlling of the narrative. All right, if they can control the narrative, he can controls the narrative. All right, you can pretty much get the people to do whatever you want. If you control everything people see, everything they read, right, everything that they hear, everything that they consume, right, you can be a god to these people, and that's pretty much what Esau Edom is set up right now on the left hand side. All right, if you have the eyes, the ears, the eyes and the spiritual ears to see and hear what's going on. Okay, so anyway, like I said, I didn't want to make this matter of fact, you know what? There's a couple more other things I want to just kind of go into here really quick here. All right. Now, what it does here, I'm going to ask you a question. Okay, yeah. So if viewing from a biblical or symbolic angle, all right, like separating the system, all right, parallel or picking up on is really picking up what it's really about and where authority and trust are being placed in society. Right. So it goes on to say, and it gives a breakdown here, which is pretty interesting. Goes and says, all right, let's tie directly to the scriptures you've seen studying without stretching beyond what the text actually says. Groves in high places. All right, we know that to be, it's talked about in the Old Testament pattern. It says in Old Testament, groves often tied to idols like Asheroth. All right, high places were locations where people mix worship, culture, power, outside of what Yahweh Shah commanded. Right. And that reminds me what did Jeremiah say in the third chapter? Matter of fact, I'm gonna grab that really quick because it just mentioned here high places, high hills, right? Because just as the people were looking for answers, they were looking for ways. These things are now these high places. These temples, these ziggurats are set up for today in modern time for people to go and do the same thing. This is Jeremiah 3:23. Truly in vain is salvation hoped for from the hills and from the multitude of the mountains. Right, talking about what? Those high groves, those high places, because people were going there to look for answers. Just as today, people are going to be going and logging in to these data centers because they're going to be ultimately looking for a way out of hell, man. They're going to be looking for salvation. Goes on to say, truly in the Lord our power is salvation of Israel. You see, and that's talking about the elect of Israel only. All right. So if you're not an Israelite, chiefly a man of the Lord or a prophet of the elect of Israel, you can forget it. Okay. But nonetheless, people are going to go there and they're going to log into these different platforms and going to hold these platforms at high regards, looking for salvation, a way out, looking for answers. You see? And it mentions you can actually it talks about that in what is it, Deuteronomy 12, and I think the 2 through 4 or 5. All right, where the groves and the high places were destroyed. All right, First Kings. All right, where they were judged whether or not they would remove those high places and those temples. You can read about that. Right. So basically, as I said, all things are pretty much being repeated. All right, as brothers like to talk about, this being the second leg of Rome, the Roman Empire. This is nothing more than America's nothing more than the Roman Empire with technology. All right, high level technology at that. All right. Goes on to say here, what was the issue? It wasn't just trees and location, it was an alternative system of authority, man controlled access to truth or divine favor, blending truth with corruption, right? We see that on a daily, right? You see how this man moves. Even when he's get voted in office, what's the first thing he does? He puts his hand on the Bible. Well, you swear on the Bible, right? But the things that are written there in the Bible, you don't do. All right. If this is supposed to be a Christian, regarded as a Christian nation, right? When you put your hand to swear on the Bible, all right, but yeah, you don't do the things that are written therein. All right. At the end of the day, it's all deception. Goes on to say, parallel to today, data systems can act like alternative authorities, defining truth, visibility, and influence outside Yahweh Shemashah's standards. Right. And that's exactly what it was erected for. Okay. Two, priests versus gatekeepers of knowledge. In ancient temples, priests controlled interpretation of law, access to sacred knowledge, rituals that shaped society. Right. And this is the same thing that these data centers are going to control and are controlling right now. Today, small groups of institutions and engineers control information flow, algorithm, what is seen versus what is hidden. Again, control of the narrative. Okay? So platforms like Google search, YouTube, and Instagram, right? All of these platforms are nothing more than gatekeepers. All right. If you really want to have the understanding, that's all they are, modern day gatekeepers. All right. Goes on to say, and this echoes the idea of men sitting on the seat of of a man sitting on the seat of authority or knowledge, not spiritual peace, but a functional ones. Right. That reminds me of what Second Thessalonians. Let me grab that. Second Thessalonians 2, and I'll start at 3. Let no man deceive you by any means. All right. And this is what Paul is saying to the church in Thessalonica. All right. Just as the prophets are saying today, don't let that damn devil deceive you. All right. These data centers are set up for strictly for deception. Okay. Again, like I said, so the same thing Paul was saying back then, the prophets are saying today. So that day will not come except there be a falling away first. All right. What day? The day that the son of the and the man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. All right. So we fell away already. We fell away from our heritage. We fell away from grace. All right. We were divorced as a nation by breaking the covenant. The Lord cast us off for a certain period of time. All right. So during that time, as we fell away, and now that we've come back, this man is now being revealed. So all things had to happen in their order. Okay. We had to fall away first in order to come back. All right. In this latter end time, all right, where we're in the fourth part of the world. Okay. Here in America, the Western end, where now we've received the spirit of Yahweh Shah. We know the truth, and we can put this man to the scene of the crime. All right. We can identify him as who he is, not only who he is, but what he's doing and what he's going to do through the scriptures. You see? Goes on to say, here's the point, 2 Thessalonians 2 and 4, who supposeth and exalted himself above all that is called God, or that is worship, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. And that's what these data centers are all about. All right. Coming to him for all want and need of all things. All right. Controlling the narrative. All right. Pretty much where you're mirroring the vibration of this devil. And that's what he wants the people to do. Okay. Following after and wandering after the beast in his image. Okay, goes on to say image of the beast, the control system. I didn't even was gonna pull this. Revelations 13. 13:16, it describes a system where buying and selling is controlled, an image that influences behavior, a structure that requires participation to function in society. Right. That image that influences behavior. What's that image? The same image as the first beast, all right, the ancient Roman Empire, all right, which really goes all the way back to the Tower of Babel, if you want to be honest, all right, the New World Order, all right. So it's being erected again in Rome 2.0 and on a platform of technology, by way of technology, should I say. You see? So where it says buying and selling, okay, letting you know. See, Chad even knows this has nothing to do, the MOTB has nothing to do with Christianity, embargo, a white woman. This is talking about finance and commerce. Okay, so that's what all this stuff is being led up to. These data centers are led up. The end game is to solidify the new world order across the board, where everybody is CHIPed. That's the end game. All right, and all that's going to run through there. Remember what I just brought out earlier about the three pillars of the new world order and what they consist of. All right, so all this is wrapped into one if you can receive it. So, not saying that this equals that directly, but structurally, you can see how a global control system becomes possible in a way it never was before. Right. Because it wasn't time back then as it's time now. That's the reason. That's the point. You see? Go ahead and lock it. Let me turn this light on. So it says what? Not saying this equals that directly. Well, that's what the prophets are saying. That's exactly what it is. All right. But structurally, you can see how a global control system becomes possible in a way it never was before. And that's what these data centers are all about. All right. This is the foundation. All right. These data centers are the foundation to the MOTB. All right. Well, all things are going to run through that. You see? This is why this man is in such a hurry. All right. So while you going to these different platforms to figure out and try and figure out what's going on, the men of the Lord out here telling you exactly what's going on. All right. This is nothing more than a stronghold. It's an enchantment that this man has over the world. All right. Too many people run to this thing all the time. And even us, brothers, we use it, but we use it through the spirit. All right. You know, you have to have the spirit of the Lord upon you. All right. Especially when going into the Bible and different things like that. You have to be a learned man. All right. A lot of times we want to just to see what they say, but at the same time, as we know, chat, what it is a platform that learns. All right. It learns from people all over the world. All right. It goes on to say here, and it talks about come out of her, my people, talking about Revelation 18. All right, come out of my people that you received none of her plagues, right? Because what's the plagues? Ultimately, it's destruction of Babylon the Great. Something happened. All right, but everything is done in order. All right, everything is done um, in steps. You have to separate from this place first mentally, right? And that first starts with what? Waking up. All right, that's why it's called what? The awakening period, the great awakening that's happening right now. All right, where that stronghold is now is wearing off. All right, Second Thessalonians, we just read the reason why, because the spirit of the Lord's mouth is consuming this man as his words, as the Lord's Yahabashimia's words are being spoken. All right, the stronghold is coming off of the people. The people are starting to wake up and see things of what they really are. That's why it goes on to say, and then the Son of Man shall be revealed, or the Son of Perdition shall be revealed. So he's being revealed right now, but first it has to be prophesied. You see that? So everything happens in stages. So as you come out of her first, all right, meaning separate from the system, ultimately, why? Because you don't want to receive the plagues that are going to come onto this place. You see? It goes on to say, not adopting its values, not trusting its system as your source of truth, not becoming dependent on corrupted structure, right? Because that's what this is. These data centers are nothing more but corrupted infrastructures to corrupt the minds of the people, galvanize the minds of the people. That's what they're created. That's what they're created for. All right, total control. And either you're going to bend the knee or you're going to be ostracized from society. You won't be able to buy or sell. You won't be able to get medication. Right? You won't be able to drive to the store. You won't be able to eat. You won't have water. You won't have all these things. Revelation 13:16. He causeth all. How is he causing them? By way of this technology. All right. Because as this technology moves forward, so are the draconian laws that are going to push with it and the consequences for those that resist. All right? To understand what this is, it says key reality check important. Here's where balance matters. Data centers are not literally temples, they're tools. The real issue is biblically is always who you trust, who defines truth for you, what systems you rely on. And all those answers should be Yahweh, why Yahweh Shah. Who you trust, Yahweh, why Yahweh Shah. Who defines truth for you, Yahweh, why Yahweh Shah. What systems do you rely on? You rely on the men of the Lord that have the breath, all right, of Yahweh, why Yahweh Shah. See that? Goes on to say ancient Israel fell when they adopted the systems around them instead of staying what? Set apart. So that's how we fell. All right. The same way that people are being destroyed today, right now, with these grows of technology, which are these data centers, the same way as it's saying right here that we fell as a nation, right? Because we started being influenced by their idols, all right, going in their temples, looking for answers, deities, right? We're looking for the divine. So all this is happening for a reason. All right. So again, like I said, I don't want to make this too long. I just kind of wanted to go into it. Like I said, just kind of land back off with the brother Osmond Wath, beautiful brother, what he did a lesson on not too long ago. And Spirit hopped on me tonight to be able to get it done. And Abaratazah, I pray this was edifying for those who may receive it. Once again, we'll give all praises and honor to Yahweh, by Yahweh Shah, and double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, the elder bishops. Shalom until the next time.